Welcome back, everyone. We are live today from Iowa City, Iowa. It is the hub of politics in the country, and it has been a lesson, to say the least, to be here. I have met so many amazing people, and today, in honor of Military Month, we have been at the American Legion, number 7, post 721, and meeting with all the individuals here. They have a great setup, which has been just tremendous, and to get to know all of the Iowa residents. In fact, one of them gave me this pin today. A woman pins it on. It is a red dress, which just fits me perfectly. And it is in honor of women who have heart conditions. And so it was a real honor to be able to meet her and her family today. But we're going to change course. Our guest has just joined us, and we're going to be talking about military research, science, and how we support those who serve. And so we have Dr. Jennifer Murphy that is joining us today, and we will be bringing her on in just a minute. We want to make sure that we're always expanding our view of the problem sets that we're facing in our country. It's not the case that it's just about one piece of the puzzle. It's about all of the puzzle. And of course, we all want to focus on our military personnel, our active duty, but we also want to think about our reservists and think about all of the people that support them, from the contractors to the research scientists to the technologists, the engineers, and everyone in between. So, Dr. Murphy, it's great to have you on the call with us today. And I've just given the intro, so we will pass directly to you to tell us a little bit about your background and how it is that you got to where you are today.
Okay, well, first of all, it's good to see you. I'm following your adventures across the country, and it looks like you're having some really good conversations with folks while you're doing this.
Yeah, we are. Today we're in Iowa, so the hot question has been, how does the Iowa caucus actually work? And I think given that we both work in this kind of strategic military space, it's very interesting to find out there's basically no strategy that is employed.
That
Which
sounds
I had
familiar. So you're totally good with this, and this works with you, and you totally you're fine, right? Like, no plan, no problem. We got this, right?
I know. Well, it's just kind of amazing when you start pulling the curtain back, and there's this assumption that this is an impossible task to run for president. And then you start looking behind the curtain, you're like, I don't know if it's entirely impossible. I think it's been built up to sound that way. But when I start talking to people and I get real information, boots on the ground, I don't think it's anywhere near as sophisticated, organized, or strategic as we all assume it to be. So I dare say I think the book may be very interesting.
That's good. I think that's really kind of hopeful, I think, for a lot of people too. I think it really is. But I also think it's important to start having some of the conversations that you're having. So that's kind of the point and goal, and that's why I think this is a really fun experience, at least to watch on our end anyway.
Well,
So
I appreciate the support 100%. It is, it's lonely on the road for sure, because you have to be on all the time. But it is amazing to talk to people and find out how little about the way government works, and how they all know that like something doesn't add up, but they don't know what it is. And when you
mhm.
explain how we spend money and build programs, it's like this light bulb goes off, and people go, "Oh, I get it. I get it now. Wait a minute. That means somebody from Congress wouldn't have any idea how to do this." I said, bingo.
Yeah, so I literally just explained this whole process to somebody like 2 hours ago for a project that we have, talking about the acquisition process and how government works and how government buys things. And I was like, okay, let's say that you want ice cream. You just go to Publix and you're like, I have all kinds of ice cream. What's on BOGO today? And you get that and you go home and you eat your ice cream. But if the government wants Baskin Robbins in a fob, that can happen, and that does happen, and it did happen, but it didn't happen that way, right? So you kind of have to understand how the whole machine works, and it makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense. But like once you understand, you're like, oh yeah, well of course this is the problem. Like it's like this, yeah, this is why this doesn't work, and it all makes sense. And there's a reason for all of it. And I think that's one thing that people don't really understand about the government and
No.
the process and how it all goes is like there's a reason for all of it. And you might not like it and you might not think it's the best way that we can do things or the most efficient way of getting things done, but there's a rationale behind all of it. And there are different ways of solving those problems, but those are the problems that exist, and I
Yeah.
think it's really understanding and acknowledging that we have to kind of get our head around. And there are a lot of attempts to do that, but anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the major issues, though, is that we don't allow our federal workers to talk very often. And I understand, on one hand, why we don't do that, because we do need you just to be serving and working. On the other hand, when it gets to a point where people don't understand what's happening or distrust builds because they don't have information that, frankly, is completely shareable, that's when I think we start to have issues. And so that's why I love talking with people like you and others. Yesterday, we met with one of the professors from University of Omaha, and he's got this huge program for the intelligence community. And they're a national center for excellence, and they do this amazing work. But people don't know that kind of stuff is happening. And so we're all, honestly, the vibe in the country is fatigue. People are exhausted. They're just tired of it. And so when I talk to them and I say, I can give you not hope because I speak happy, but hope because I can say, go to this website and see how this works. Go to this blueprint and see how it rolls out. Go and watch this video and see somebody who's working on something that's important to you. And they're really oftentimes, I hate to use the word flabbergasted, but they're pretty close a lot of times. People are very surprised.
Well, there's so much good news to say, but you can't say it. So this is true. I was in a meeting 2 days ago in the morning. I had to do a briefing, and so I'm the last one to talk, right? Because I'm the least important person in this meeting, and everyone else is talking. They're like, okay, well, we know that all of these other events are going on and private entities are putting them on and you really would like to support them because that's part of your job, but you can't. And you just, you can't say anything good about what's happening. You can't influence anything else good that's happening. You just have to kind of trust the process and understand that there are risks involved to talking about what you do also. And, like I totally get it. I totally get it. But
yeah, I think we can
there's
find
so
it
much
in
good
between.
going on. Yeah.
There is. There's a lot more good going on than people realize. And we have a joke on my team. The sky is falling, send me money. Because that's what I read in every email I get. And I said, when does somebody realize we sound like the boy that cried wolf?
Yeah.
Because I can look outside and the sky doesn't look like it's falling. So I'm not saying there aren't bad things happening. There definitely are. And we have to solve those. But to suggest that everything is disastrous and unsolvable and that's not accurate.
Right.
It's not accurate.
Also that there's nothing good, especially nothing good that the government's doing, because the government is doing a lot of good stuff. It's just you're not allowed to talk about it.
They absolutely are. That's right. That's right. So that's why we need people like you and me who get brave enough to get out and start talking. So Jen, tell us a little bit about your background. For those who don't know you, kind of how did you get here? What are your credentials?
So
I'm getting old enough to say that now.
Seriously, yeah, it's been 15 years. I've been at this job, like related work, for about 15 years now, which is terrifying to think of. But so I got my degree in experimental psychology. So when I was 14 years old, I wanted to be a psychologist, and I made up my mind right then. And the problem with me is that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's just how my life is. And so I decided right then that that was going to be the path I was going to take. I took psychology classes in college. I went to grad school, got a PhD in psychology. And along that path, I didn't, when I was 14, I wanted to, be a clinical psychologist, like everyone who starts in psychology does. And I was like, I feel like I could do like better doing something else. And I really got interested in how the brain works and how cognition happens and how perception happens. And experimental psychology really started taking over my field of interest. So I said, well, what can I do with this? And my professor said, you are going to be in school for a long time, kiddo. And I said, okay, fine. And so I did my PhD in basically in visual perception. And that was really like what what I was interested in doing was helping to understand how people work, but mostly in terms of how people learn and process information and things like that. So it was about 2003, and I wasn't going to get a job, an academic position. There was like no way. So I heard that the Army was hiring people to do this sort of work. And I was like, wait, hold up. I can get paid to live in DC where I want to live anyway, and do research and help people and have a relatively stable job and not have to teach kids. Like, why would I not do this? So I did, and went to DC and started working for the Army up there, the Army Research Institute. And then they moved me down to Orlando in about 2007. My research has really always kind of involved emerging technology and how to use it for selection or training or putting people in the right job or making sure that they perform as well as they possibly can. And with service members, it's really important that they have access to the leading edge technology. It's really important, but it's also really hard because there's a cost associated with all of this stuff. It's honestly not a job that I ever thought that I was going to be stuck in, because
Interesting choice of words.
well, because a lot of people don't think you don't think you're going to go down this path, but then I'll tell you a story about like this is the day that this was it for me. So I was doing some work at the time, looking at counter IED training, right? So roadside bombs were killing everybody in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was a huge problem. I was doing all this work to try and train people to be able to find them. That was kind of like what I was doing. And we're doing the data collection, so going and talking to soldiers who had just come back from theater, and they had just come back from either Iraq or Afghanistan, and this was 2005, 2006-ish. And so I was still relatively young in my career, anyway, now that I'm like, an established career person or whatever. But we were doing interviews. I was at Fort Campbell, and which is up there in Kentucky, kind of near Nashville. And so I was talking to this one soldier, and I'm, up there giving my song and dance, like, here's why we're here. We're collecting information from you. We're trying to help you. And of course, they never understood why I was there. They thought I was there to teach them something because they're in a classroom. And so, like, this kid was like, teacher, teacher, and raised his hand. And I was like, okay, one, I'm not your teacher. Two, what's up? And he said, I have a metal plate in my head. And I looked at him, and he couldn't have been more than 18, 19 years old. And I was like, no, you don't. And he's like, yes, I do. And I said, no, you don't. And I walked over to him, and he grabbed my hand and put it on his head. And he did. He did have a metal plate, like, right there in his head. And he pulled up his pants leg, and he still had shrapnel from where a roadside bomb had gone off and gone into his leg. And it was stuck. Like, it probably is still there anyway. But you see a kid like that, and I was a kid at the time, but you see a kid like that and who had been through obviously so much and who said, you know what? I'm right back at it. I'm devoted to this. This is the thing I feel strongly about. This is the thing I want to do. And I want to serve my country, and I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And he wanted to get right back out there. And I was like, one, I have hope for every single person in this room because you guys are so freaking strong. And
Yeah.
two, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, I'm going to try to do it. And that was the day. Like, that was the day. I'll never forget him. And that kind of set me on this path. And that's why I do what I do, really. And since then, I mean, I've probably talked to 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers, Marines,
Yeah.
airmen, sailors, and you have experiences like that all the time. And they'll open up to you, and people will just talk to you and tell you about their experiences, and it's so powerful. And you don't think about what these folks go through, being away from their family, being in a life or death situation. And it's really kind of the least you can do to find ways to make their lives better, like, honestly. And it sounds corny, but I really do believe that. I do. It's
I
important.
often have to say the same thing. I know I sound corny saying how protective I feel of our military personnel as I'm on the trail, but it does. It's very sincere because you're right. We run into these stories, and I don't think people realize that it sticks with you when
Yeah.
you hear those kinds of stories. I have a number as well, and it was the day that made me start on the process of running for president was the day that a Marine told me a story, and I went home and said, I have a problem. I cannot stand by and watch these men and women, what I now say, risk life, limb, and mind. I've added mind because I think it's really important to say that. And what I'm afraid of public ridicule, I'm afraid of what? What in the world am I possibly afraid of that they haven't already faced? And I think if everybody in the country even just had a sliver of that, just even exposure to it, I think we'd have a very different world. And so thank you for telling that story. I didn't know that one. That's a profound
Yeah.
one. And 18, I mean, that was like first
He was
tour
a kid.
then.
Oh God, he was a kid. Yeah. And yes, I was like, you're barely out of high school. And he'd already come back. It was back when we were doing those, longer deployments, like 18-month deployments, and they'd come back for 6 months
Right.
and get right back out there. And during that time, when we were in both of those wars at the same time, like full on, it was an interesting time to start this career, like starting in the middle of all that. It was interesting because it was so much and it was so emotional for everyone. I think, everyone says that they support our troops. Like everyone's like, support our troops. Like, of course, and no one's going to ever say that they don't, right? Like, 'cause you don't. But I don't think not enough people really understand what that looks like.
No.
And what they do. And we all have stereotypes about everything, but like to be able to put a face to some of this stuff, um, yeah, it changes your perspective. And I would have never thought when I was in school at Georgia, I would have never thought that I would feel this strongly about something, but you do. You end up feeling very strongly about it. And it helps you understand. There's like some empathy that you don't have for a lot of people outside of your own group for one reason or another. And it's easy to say that you have empathy for other people, but until you actually see how they do and put yourselves in their shoes, like it's different. It really is. And I think that's important. I think we don't have a lot of that right now.
No, we are definitely struggling with that empathy piece. Although, if I may give you some hope, and those who are watching, I can absolutely tell you that when the cameras are off and you simply talk to people, and I talk to people from both sides, far right to far left, and everything in between, people come down a notch and they get real and they are willing to hear from other people's perspectives far more than what we see on TV. So I
Mm-hmm.
think much like, and it's not shocking, but I couldn't guarantee that I was going to find that. But I definitely consistently, I think we're in state number 27 today. And so it's getting to, yeah, we're getting to saturation. And so we're hearing the same rhythm of belief systems over and over again. And people are tired and they are thinking about other people. So I have hope. I just don't know how fast it will happen. Um, but with regard to the research, so
Oh
as a
yeah, we're talking about
psychologist,
research. Yeah.
well, and
Good
I
job.
think a lot of people don't realize, we think about psychologists and immediately we go to, and fairly so, how do we reduce the suicide rate?
Mm-hmm.
Fair question, but that is not the kind of research that you do. And I think it's beneficial for people to understand psychology really is about the human, which is
Right.
a whole lot of pieces. So tell us a little bit about your research in particular, in order to kind of expose people to those concepts. It's not just emotions, but it's the human interaction.
Sure. And so there's a lot that I feel like people probably don't know. So I'm in Orlando, Florida. Um, Hi, everyone in Orlando. So I've
I'm
actually
missing home.
I know. Hi, it's where you're from. So down here in Orlando, everyone thinks about House of the Mouse, right? So they think that the only things to do, you get on the airport, you get on the bus, you go to Mickey Mouse, and like that's it. And people don't even know
Right.
there's a city here. Like I'm in a high rise, right? Like people don't even know that that is a thing in Orlando. A lot of people don't understand that the Department of Defense's modeling and simulation hub is in Orlando also. And there's a long history of that we don't really need to get into. But The military invests a lot in new technology. And the reason why is that we have to be better than everybody else. Like we just have to. It's part of our responsibility, but that's kind of what we need to do on a lot of levels. So we invest a lot in technology, and we do it to help keep service members and their families safe and effective, and to keep them from getting hurt, and to keep them from getting fatigued, and to keep them from not performing as well as they can on a lot of different levels. And a lot of that has to do with thinking about things in terms of efficiency. So how can I get you to reach your objectives as quickly as possible? So sometimes that involves using technology to get them to learn stuff faster. So do you not know something that maybe I can teach you faster if I'm using new technology? So maybe I can give you a more personalized learning experience. Maybe I can give you another opportunity for learning that you wouldn't have had because I could put it on your phone. Maybe I can put you in a virtual environment so you can feel something and sense something that you might not be able to otherwise, because I'm going to put you in a situation that's kind of stressful, or because there's something else going on that I can't really replicate, like the inside of a cockpit. Maybe it has to do with you learning and having certain experiences. Maybe it has to do with me just giving you tools to help you do your job better. So maybe if you're trying to fix an airplane, I can give you something in augmented reality, either on your phone or on your headset, and you can see what you're supposed to do. So now I don't have to learn how to do anything. It's just right there in front of my face. And that's going to help you do your job better too. So that's going to save time. It's going to save money. It looks like a lot of money is being invested in research, and people might think that it's kind of frivolous, but you have to spend money to make money. We all know that. And this research helps us understand how we interact with technology, and it's going to become increasingly important because there are other countries that are similarly investing in this area, and there are corporations that are investing in this area.
Yes.
So some of the work that we do is for companies outside of the DoD, and they're very interested in this too. How can we make everybody more efficient? And if I'm more efficient at my job because I'm better trained or because my performance is being supported, then that saves the government money. It saves people getting hurt, which is probably the most important thing. It saves planes from crashing. It saves friendly casualties from happening. It saves all sorts of things. So that's why we do what we do. But all of us down here are basically involved in looking at different kinds of technology for helping soldiers train, basically. Everything from ginormous simulators, like big cave simulators where you walk in and you're surrounded by all these screens. You're like, whoa, dude, I'm totally in a cave right now. And all this stuff is flying at me and I don't even know what's going on. So everything from that to training on a mobile phone or, just desktop training, something like that. Anything involving technology and training, it basically happens here. So I own a small business that I will now plug because I'm on the internet, and it's called Quantum Improvements Consulting. We've been in business for 5 years. We do a lot of work for the Army, the Navy, and where used to work, the ADL Lab. We're actually doing a lot of support of that organization also. And what we're trying to do is look at not just the technology, but how you use it to measure performance. So, you've probably heard people say that if you can't measure it, then you don't even really know that it's a thing. That's not the saying at all, but whatever. So what we're doing is looking at different ways of pulling data out of technology and using that to personalize learning experiences, predict learning outcomes, say, because I know this stuff about you, before I put you in a training situation, you might have this outcome, and we're going to do the things that we can do to make sure that you're doing as best as you can. So that, and then also looking at evaluating learning outcomes too. So if you've got data about people and their performance, there's a lot you can do with it. It's really powerful. A lot of people are afraid of that. I'm not. Witness, like we're on Facebook right now, and I'm like, yes, take my life, Mark Zuckerberg. But well, I mean, I'm not afraid of it, right? I'm not doing anything I don't want Facebook to know about. So yeah, so if you have access to data like that, you can really improve the efficiency of things, and you can tell if technology is working and that interface
Right.
between the human and technology, and you can measure that. And there's so much that we can measure. And it does speak to this bigger issue about big data and it being used for good or bad or awesome or however we're going to use it. But I would encourage us all to look at the potential for the forces of good. Like we can help a lot of people if we act responsibly with performance data. So that's
Yes, I
basically
often
what I
say that
do.
weapons can be used to harm or defend, and it just matters who's using it. And so, data and technology are one of those pieces where, yeah, like anything else, it can be problematic. So can a car, right?
Yep.
A car can be a weapon as well, but certainly more times than not, it's used for transportation. And it's the same thing with technology and data. Um, if you will, can you remark a little bit? I know there are people who hear these words, technology, data, measurement, watching, assessment, and they start hearing, we're not going to need to do this anymore.
Yes. Yeah, they are. You better hope they are. They're not going to be able to come get you when you get kidnapped if they don't. No.
But people are afraid. So
they are. And they are. It's a trust issue also. And I think there are a lot of really important discussions. So we do a lot of stuff with augmented and virtual reality. And
okay, so tell us what augmented and virtual reality are, because not everybody knows those terms.
Okay. So Pokemon Go. And no, it always starts with Pokemon Go. Like the discussion always starts with Pokemon Go, no matter what. So there's a way that you can use technology to superimpose digital information to your senses. Sometimes you can do it on top of the world that you're looking at. So augmented reality and Pokemon Go is actually a pretty good example, although I like the dinosaur version, like the Jurassic Park version, because
I don't even know what that is.
And you can put pictures of dinosaurs on the real world. That's augmented reality.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a way of superimposing digital stimuli or digital pictures, digital information. It could be sights and sounds and smells and anything else. A way of superimposing that on the real world while you're still involved in the real world. So that's a good example. If football. So if you watch football, you'll notice that these days they've got that yellow line that goes across that tells
Perfect.
you like where the down is. That's augmented reality.
Right.
Basically, that's what that is.
Yep.
NASCAR, when they've got that bubble that goes around NASCAR that tells you like who's in the car and the lap and all that, that's augmented reality. Virtual reality is when you hear people talking about the Oculus Quest and the Oculus Go and like those headsets that go on your face and game, like it's largely used for entertainment purposes now, but it's a fully immersive environment like that. So you're in a video game, basically, is what that is. And it's this, you can use similar technology platforms to do both, but they have different use cases. So for example, Pokemon Go, if you ever played that game, it encouraged you to walk around and catch Pokemon, right? So you had to go around with your phone and be like, oh, what's Pokemon, right? And I did a lot of Pokemon Go, so like I know. And virtual reality is a little different because right now you don't want to walk too far, even though there are headsets that are wireless now, and you could walk around town with your VR headset on. That's not a great idea because you're going to bump into something, right? Like most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's for use with situations that are for training anyway. For the military is interested in it. For learning in situations that are stressful. So if I want to put you in a situation, like a combat situation, but I don't want you to actually potentially get hurt, I'm going to put you in there first so you get used to what it looks like and what it feels like, maybe what your weapons feel like, and you're still safe and you're okay and I can still talk to you. Because if you're super overwhelmed, then there's no way that anyone's going to be able to get anything in here because you're freaking out, right?
Yep. As former Secretary Mattis used to say, 20 bloodless battles before you go into theater, which is on the battlefield. And it's for exactly that point. You want the person to be as comfortable in that space as they possibly can be, so they're as alert as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, otherwise it's too much at once and you're just going to be too busy looking out and you're not going to learn anything. But you are.
It's true.
You are. So that's really what virtual reality is for. So I think I was freaking people out about this. Right? So yes, so we do a lot of stuff with that. But you have the potential with that or any technology really, and it's not just for training, it's any technology that you interact with. There's information about you that could potentially be collected. And you've got the Facebook scam. There's the celebrity Instagram scam that came out 2 days ago where
Right.
maybe a celebrity that I might be mildly obsessed with happened to repost that, you know, hey, Instagram, you don't have the right to take any of my data, but yeah, I mean, like you do, right? Sorry, I do. But yes, you could potentially, it could be the case that someone is going to go through every event of your life and every word you've ever said and find some combination of things and hold you hostage for it. Like, maybe. But what's much more likely to happen is that there will be some sort of a machine learning algorithm that will look for overall trends and will do kind of like they do with the video cameras in London and solve crimes with it. And if you think about the data that we give to 23andMe and to Ancestry.com, like you give them your
Right.
DNA, like they could probably clone you if they wanted to. I dare them to clone me. I dare them to clone me. And then you're gonna have to deal with that. And you ask my mother what that's like, and I don't think that you're gonna want to do it. But anyways, we've been able to solve crimes that way. We've been able to reunite families that way. We've been able to give people an understanding of who they are and a sense of identity that we could do it for. Like there's so much more good stuff that we could do. Now there needs to be a broader discussion, and I would hope that as president you would maybe talk about this from the White House. A broader discussion about standards and who owns data. Do I have the right to own all the data that I generate? Does that even make sense? Because if I own it, then I can sell it, and then some people can sell it and some people can't sell it. And are we really making the class distinction that we have in this country worse if some people can have it and some people can't? Like if I can't generate as much data as you because I don't have the right phone and you're selling it and it's a commodity now, like what does that do long term? I mean, it's all these issues like that that
It's a
we're
really
gonna
hard
have to think
problem.
about. Yeah, they're hard
Yeah.
problems. And the question
Yeah.
is who's the person who's gonna make that discussion happen? Because there are
So just
so
so
many
you know, it
discussions.
is happening. When I couldn't go online and talk about it with the person because it's people on the inside. But DOJ has some folks that are very seriously talking about it, and I did meet with them, and we have gone over some of this from a policy perspective. So I will at least say, yes, you're completely right. We do need to think about it, and yes, I specifically have been thinking about it, and I'll take it one step further, which is to say, specifically talking to people on the inside about how we would actually address it. Because that would be a law thing, and it would
Mhm.
require it requires a whole cultural understanding. It's very complicated, but you're right. It has to be done correctly. It cannot be done like we normally do laws, where it's just make a law and then edit as you go. It's going
Right.
to have to be set up correct. Yeah, it's going to be much more complex than we've ever encountered in the past, and that's why I mean, I know I'm tooting my own horn, which is not really my thing, but we really do need probably a nerdy person up there for a while, because stuff is going to be very complex, and we need it to be right, not sensational.
Well, the other thing is we have to have it right from the get-go. So, and as a
Right, that's my
behavior,
point. Yeah.
yeah, like, and as a behavioral scientist, you understand this, right? So whenever we do research, we do a study, we have to get a panel of people to review it, right?
Right.
And they're like, is this good? Is this ethical? Is this necessary? Is this an undue burden on anybody? Is it really cool that you're doing this? And that's a process that we have to go through for everything, right? The
Yeah.
reason that we have to go through that process is once upon a time we didn't have that process, and there were some people that did some nasty things to some other people, right? And it was
Yep.
reactionary. And now we have these rules and now we have this process. And we had to have it because some other people were like not being great with other people. And there are some other countries, and I'm not going to name their names, but they are not this country, but they actually have laws in place based on social value from
Right.
data that they collect. And you'd like to think that we wouldn't do something like that here, but there's not a law that says you can't right now. And like,
Oh, they're
that's,
already doing it.
yeah, I know, it's
Yeah,
terrifying.
because when I have to research people who come up and offer to get involved, and I'm surprised to keep finding their social scores.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's already coming.
in other countries, like they can limit your access to things that you feel like you might
Mm-hmm.
need. And yes, this was an episode of Black Mirror. I know it was an episode of Black Mirror. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. Miley Cyrus is releasing Nine Inch Nails covers. Black Mirror happens sometimes. Like that's there you go. But it's a huge discussion, and it's so much bigger than just, well, I don't want the government to see what's on my Facebook page. Like it's so much bigger than that because it has
It's so
so
much
many
bigger.
social implications, so many social implications, and we have so much potential, and we are like touching the top of the potential that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really optimistic. Like I know that might not necessarily be my reputation, but I am really optimistic when it comes to the potential of AI and big data and these new technologies that have been around for a while, but we're now really figuring out how to use them together and how to use them to be smart. And we, as a country, we have so much potential to help so many people, but we have to be smart about it because
Right.
you don't want to be in a situation where somebody else is going to ruin it for everybody by doing something that we probably shouldn't do, you know. And it's unfortunate that we have to do that, but that's why we have to. That's why the acquisition process certainly that's why the acquisition process is what it is, right? Because every now and then somebody will
Mostly.
do something they're not supposed to do, and now we got to deal with that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we were to tie a bow around all of this, and you were to think about the research that you do and how it ties to military, looking 10 years ahead,
Mhm.
what are two things that we should be thinking about or accomplishing today in order to set us up well for what we know will be a human technology war space?
That's a good question. So two things like we as in like us, like in our job or my job, or like the government should do, or like who's we?
It could be both. It could be either. Whichever one you think is most pressing. I'm like, in other words, are we at a point where government should be involved, or are we at a point where we need to do
Yeah.
more research?
Nope, nope. Like we need to start have like, look, I'm all about research. Like it's my job. It's my career forever. Like no, we need people to start having these discussions now because so many of them are practical. It's not a question of can we. Research answers the
Absolutely.
question of can we, and then more research answers the question of how do we do it best, right? The stuff that we're
Right.
doing isn't a question of can we, it's how do we do it as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Yes.
We're past that. Once we get past the can we do it, we need to start having those discussions because technology is going like that. It's not going
Yep.
like this, and it's not going to wait. And nobody else
Right.
is going to wait. The rest of the world is not going to wait for us to figure our
No.
stuff out. No, we have got to have these discussions now. And a lot of them really are, they're ethical and they're about how to take care of the most people as we possibly can, right? How do we make sure that we're using what we have for the forces of good and the most good for the most people? And that's way over my pay grade. That's always going to be over my pay grade. But that's a discussion that needs to, and I know people are having it, but we as a society need to have that combo also. And so much of that is education about what
Yes.
this is, right? Like you might not need to know what augmented reality is, but you do need to understand that anytime you touch an interface that's a machine, anytime you touch anything that's made out of metal, basically, there's a transfer of information every
Yep.
single time. If it's plugged in, every single time there's a transfer of information. You need to understand that. And you need to understand that that can be used to give you really great Spotify playlists, in my case. And yay, Taylor Swift new album came out today. I'm really excited about that. And Spotify told me first thing this morning, boom, alarm goes off. Spotify says Taylor Swift's new album is out right now. I know you want to listen to it. I already queued it up. That's technology for the forces of good, right? But
Right.
anytime you touch technology, that's what's happening. Is it's learning about you, and the world is learning about you, and that's okay. But you know, we all have to understand at least that principle. And then
Yes.
what do we do with that, right? Because somebody's going to own that and somebody has to keep it safe. So
I
that's the other issue. The other thing I think is really important is not to get bogged down, to stop being afraid of it. There's like this balance between data and security, right? Like we want to be safe. We want to be as safe as humanly possible. But we also have to push the envelope. Like when we sent people to outer space and to the moon, That was super dangerous, right? That's when we send people to the bottom of the ocean to do exploration, that's super dangerous. Like we, as a nation, our heritage is doing super dangerous, crazy stuff. That's what we do. That's probably like Americana 101 is you have to do dumb stuff sometimes to get things done. And that's all there is to it. And we can't sit here and be like, well, it's not 100% totally safe for everything. Because, yeah, sometimes stuff is going to get busted up and broken, and that's just how that goes. And you have to take a risk. And if you don't take a risk, you're not going to go as far as you possibly can. And one of my favorite sayings that I forget who said it, it's nobody who ever thought small got big. And I take that to heart as a business owner myself, right? Because, you know,
Yeah.
if I think that my company is going to be this big forever, it's never going to be this big. You got to think big, and worst case scenario, you're moderately sized, right? Like that's how that goes. But we have to push things forward and go big with things. We do, and we have to
I
stop
love it.
being afraid.
I love it. And I think you're right. I think I actually try not to go to politics in most of our talks, but I think this one, I think it isn't political. I think actually it just speaks to what's being talked about on the political stage. And what you just said resonates with all Americans. We have to stop being afraid and we have to press forward. And I think we've gotten to a point where there is a lot of nervousness to do that, especially as we look at the generational divides. And I'm seeing it everywhere that I go. It's this, you know, and so I wholeheartedly appreciate your 2 points of number one, we are far enough along to go ahead and make changes, and two, we need to be brave enough to do it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful.
So good to see you.
And, oh, so good to see you. I'm actually coming back to Orlando September 1st. So if you have an opportunity, I'll be coming out and I'll be speaking. It's a panel called Ask Me Anything. But it has to be nice.
I was gonna say, like, I'm not getting on that panel. Absolutely not.
I know it has to be above board. But yeah, September 1st, 4 p.m. Downtown Orlando. So if you or if anyone watching has the opportunity to attend, we would love to have you out there because if nothing else, hearing about what I'm seeing around the country, it's pretty magnificent, I have to say. So, and I'm with you. Go big or go home.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
why
got to.
not?
I mean, you're living it, right? You're living it right now. So
That's right. That's right. All right, we will see you soon. Thank you.
okay, talk soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.